13 days in a row. I hauled a load every day. And so on day 13, I had that little thing in my stomach. I have a warning. We all do. Like, watch out, don't do it. So I asked this guy, Joaquin. He's a hair-lip guy, just an ugly man. I said, Joaquin, are you sure this place? Yes, I'm paying the federales off. No problem.
This is the same routine you're taking every day.
Yeah.
You're used to it 13 times, and on the final day.
Yeah, well, it wasn't no final. I was on a roll. They had marijuana stacked up by tons.
Okay.
So I'm just hauling all I can haul out of there.
Right.
But this guy, Pedro, would get in the plane with me, and Joaquin would tell him where he was going to block a highway. Sometimes it'd be 20, 30, 40 miles away. And I would, Pedro would get in the plane with me. He was light, and we'd take off and go over, and there would be a 2-ton truck blocking the highway with a rifles or machine gun on it, and about a mile down the road would be another one blocking the highway, so I was on a major freeway.
Well, why did they block the highway?
That was my runway.
Holy shit.
So no cars could come. And so I'd land, they'd put 1,100 pounds in that plane, and all, like a bucket brigade off the truck. I'd shake hands with all the Mexicans with their sombreros, and I'd get back in the plane, take off over the next place without telling them.
Oh, my God.
So every day we did it in a different place on different highways. So on day 13, I had the bad feeling all night long. It was just like, ooh, I have that. I just have a gift of it. It was just like, oh, my. And the next morning I went down and brushed my teeth just at daylight. And 10 or 12 men walked down with me. And I got in the airplane, Pedro got in, and I fired it up, and it went pow. I thought a tire busted. I looked over leisurely. Did I have a busted tire? And Pedro's yelling, "Policia, policia, policia." And I'm not at the end of the strip. I'm up part way, about halfway, so I only got about 400 or 500 feet in front of me. I usually just go there and taxi back down and turn around. So I just put the power right to the firewall, cold engine and all, and just went tearing off down the end of that strip. And when I got to the end of it, I was doing about 40, 50 miles an hour, and I rotated. And when I did, there was 4 of them, 2 on each side, and they just shredded that airplane with machine guns. There was 80 bullet holes in there, and they shot me down. And all the windows were shot out. I was shot across the top of my head, my knee, and my toe was shot off, the nail off. And
what were they shooting you from?
From both sides of the runway, from the ground.
From the ground.
You see, I just run between them. And right as I went to lift off,
they were spraying.
They just riddled it. It looked like one of them Bonnie and Clyde cars. So I went into shock, I reckon, because the world just turned yellow. And time slowed down. And the gasoline was just pouring in on me where the bullets had gone up into the tanks above my head. And the windshields was out. And a bullet had hit the strut right in front of me. And pieces of splinters of it was all in my face and my chest. And I just saw ahead of me in the river, the cliff was coming quick. And it looked like in the river, it was only knee deep or less, with stones, and they was big as this table. It looked like great turtles just at daylight was in there. And I thought, I'll crash on top of those and maybe I can live in the water. So I just pulled the power, and I didn't have no control over the yoke whatsoever, over the elevators. And it went straight in, and when it did on the first hit, the wings came off, and the second hit, the nose came and went underneath the airplane. And I'm sitting there, I guess I was knocked unconscious from the jolt, and Pedro was shaking my, "Come on, Roger, come on, Roger, come on, Roger." And I just stepped out over the nose of the plane right into the water of the river. And those federales was coming, they were still shooting it. So a couple of them hit the plane, and there was a pistol in there. Later on, I used to carry a pistol to start with, and I found it was more trouble than it was worth. But anyhow, that morning I had one, and a 9mm Browning, and I just reached and pulled it out of its holster because now the radio where it was taped to is upside down, so it's just right there. And I popped a few caps at those guys, and they ran in the rocks. And so we took off, and then I saw that Pedro's foot was nearly shot off. It was just, and it wasn't bleeding all that bad. It was just like white. And so I took my T-shirt off and tied it. We went on up the mountain, and there was an old donkey. Looked like she was 30 years old, sway back, and he knew her, Charlotte, Charlotte, and he read her. And we jumped on that donkey without a bridle or saddle, and we rode, I understand now, it was 7 miles. And we came to a little house in a clearing, and there was a small man, and he was plowing, and he had a little horse hooked to a little cow, and the two of them with a wooden yoke across their back was pulling a little plow amongst some stumps, and he was trying to make a living out of a burn place. The natives do that sometimes. And we went in his house, and his wife and his daughter put some cloth on my wounds and poured diesel oil over it to keep the flies off.
Diesel fuel?
Diesel fuel, yes.
Wow.
And so he took off, and he was gone all day. And late that afternoon, a bunch of horses and mules come trotting up into the yard, and there was a doctor there, Dr. Benjamin Soso, a Red Cross doctor, and he gave us a shot of morphine and tetanus shots, and he tried to find the bullet. I still have one in my foot. And he looked for it, and he said we had to get to hospital, and that Pedro would die if he didn't get to hospital. They had killed one person on the ground there that tried to run away that morning. So they took us to a road. We rode a long way on them mules, and we got to a truck. It was a 2-ton 10-wheeler loaded with corn in the ear. So they dug holes on one side for me and holes on the other side for him, and buried us down in that corn and covered us up. And they kept a little place for my face, but that was a real rough road, and every time that truck would roll one side to the other, the corn would roll in on me, and they'd laugh and take it back off my face. And we went through 3 roadblocks, and they said they had a platoon of soldiers and over 100 of them looking for an American shot down, believed dead. And so we got to the highway after some miles and went into a house and had a white pan, and they just kept changing it with water. I think I changed it 20 times before I got the blood and all the crud off of me from that episode.
On that last story you told, where you got shot down by the federales, and you got shot in the toe,
and the knee, and in the top of the foot, and across the top of the head,
and the top of the head. After you went and got all fixed up, and you were getting transported with the corn, and where did you eventually end up after all that?
I went to Guadalajara and got on an airplane and flew back to Los Angeles.
Okay.
And Murray took me to Wilmington, where I got medical care in a hospital there.
Okay. How old were you at that point? Was that your first time actually being shot at?
No, the revenuers had shot at me back in Georgia before.
The who?
The federal revenuers back in Georgia when I was making whiskey. They shot at me. 8 of them emptied their bullets their pistols at me.
In your plane?
No, I was on the ground running from a liquor steal.
Holy shit.
Yeah, they mean to kill you. They don't care. If they got a badge and a gun and you don't do what they say, they'll just kill you.
Right.
It's like, all right, we got a license to kill him.
But it was your first time actually in the when you got into the transporting business, flying drugs back and forth. It was the first time that you encountered any kind of resistance.
Yes.
And so after you get back home to L.A. and you're with Mari, you get fixed up at the hospital, and I'm sure your wife's trying to convince you to stop doing this, right?
Not particularly. I was pretty cool about it. We went to Hawaii, and I had to put my foot up on a crutch, so I had to keep it higher in my head for a month or two. That thing throbbed. And so the children bring me pina coladas at the hotel in Hawaii, and then we went to...
How bad did your foot get messed up in that shot?
Not bad. It just took the toenail off of the top of the big toe, and one slug got into the foot and went right back at the joint, a part of a bullet.
Mm. Okay.
So I wasn't hurt bad. I mean, to be nicked, you could have been killed just as easy.
And one scraped right across the top of your head?
My head. Yeah, I got a scar right across where it went across the top of my head.
Wow.